there's incredible footage of Daryl Davis at a Klan rally, you know, and he's surrounded by all these Klansmen in their robes. And he's there because he was invited by this guy. And this guy is telling all of his fellow Klansmen, you know, I respect this guy because he respects me enough to sit down and talk to me. And so I respect him to sit down and talk to him. That's insane. But he achieved that through modeling the behavior and saying, you know, look, I respect you as a human being. I don't think you're a monster. I don't think you're a horrible person. I don't agree with your ideas. I think you're wrong, but I want to understand. I want to understand where you're coming from. Explain to me how can you hate me when you don't even know me?
Angel Eduardo, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Melody. It's great to meet you. Can
you introduce yourself and what it is you're currently doing as an artist and a writer at the moment?
Well, I'm a writer, a musician. I do all kinds of creative work. I've been playing in bands since I was 13 or 14 years old. I do photography as well. I would love to do filmmaking, but I just don't have the bandwidth or the money. But my day job, thankfully, I'm one of those few people who can say that they do the thing they love for a living, which wasn't always true, but it is true now. I'm senior editor and writer for the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, FIRE, free speech advocacy organization. So I do all kinds of stuff for them, writing scripts and op-eds and explainers and all kinds of stuff about free speech. I help with social media and things like that too. And I'm also on the board of directors for the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, FAIR, and I'm a fellow for FAIR in the Arts. And that's, it's you're part of it, and it's a group hoping to foster a more open and inclusive, ironically enough, community in the arts, because there's been some issues with that. And yeah, as an artist, I play in a band right now. I'm making music. I write a ton now for work. So I haven't written outside of work in a little bit. But yeah, just compulsive creative. That's what I call myself.
I love it. Compulsive creative. I also want to talk about your involvement in FAIR, and I guess what kind of values would you say FAIR promotes? Maybe specifically FAIR in the arts.
FAIR in the Arts, well, yeah, they're similar, right? FAIR in the Arts is sort of like a subdivision of FAIR that is focused primarily on the arts, but the core values and the core approach is the same, which is, we shouldn't be judging one another or one another's work on the basis of our immutable characteristics or our identity characteristics. There's nothing wrong with focusing on your identity characteristics for your artistic expression, if that's what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with exploring that stuff. There's nothing wrong with being excited about it and really interested in your culture and your background and all that kind of stuff. But it shouldn't be a closed door. It shouldn't be a thing that limits people from creating art. There's a lot of stuff going around today about, people not being allowed, quote unquote, to write characters or to portray characters that don't share their ethnic background or their skin color or whatever it is. And that's a limitation on art. And so FAIR in the Arts is trying to present a wider perspective on all this stuff. Yes, it's important. Representation is important, but we have to be careful not to be shallow about what representation means. And we have to be open and allow art to be created just for the sake of art. It doesn't have to have a message or a political message. It doesn't have to have an ideological bent. It can give a perspective it can give many perspectives. It can give any perspective. It should be up to the artist to create something that they're proud of and happy about and excited to share. And it's up to us to interpret it and discuss it. And, just keeping that culture of discourse and inspiration and aspiration open. I think that's where FAIR in the Arts is coming from. And it's an offshoot of the larger cultural issues that FAIR touches on, which is all about creating a common culture based on these fundamental principles of fairness, understanding, and humanity. The fact that we are all at the same time perfectly unique and unlike anything else or anyone else in the whole universe. But at the same time, we share 99.99% of our genes, and we're so alike and we're so the same because we have this common humanity that we share. So those two poles kind of together meeting should be the foundation of our culture and the foundation of our interaction with one another. I think that's where we're all coming from.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I totally agree with that about we've got much more in common than we do apart. But it seems like in the arts we're really emphasizing difference, and I feel like it comes from a good place because people in society experience quote unquote oppression differently. But I just remember I sent my friend the other day, I sent her the Fear in the Arts link, and I was like, look at this organization, look at all their values. And she was just like, yeah, that should be a given. And I'm like, but it's not. Like, I don't see these values emphasized in the arts at all. And I don't know, maybe she's much more politically left wing than me. And so she thought, yeah, this is what's happening in the arts. But I was just like, no, like it can be polarizing if you don't agree with all these ideologies. I'm wondering if you can explain, maybe go into depth a bit more about what you're seeing in the arts, the ideologies you're seeing and the polarization, and when did you start to see all that?
You know, with art, I mean, I guess there's always been sort of politically correct art, and there's always been backlashes to politically incorrect art. You know, I mean, in the 1980s, there was this whole campaign by a bunch of politicians here in the States, or I think it was politicians' wives. Like, it was kind of Al Gore's wife, Tipper Gore, and a few other people, you know, trying to basically censor heavy metal music, you know, calling it all kinds of nefarious things, assuming all these kinds of nefarious things. You know, there's always been a backlash to culture. I mean, for as long as we can remember, there have been books that outraged parents and outraged people, and, you know, we can't let children read this stuff. So it's always been there, I think. And it's always been, in my view, the job of the artist to trespass those things and to say, well, you know, Carlin has a great line about how it's the job of the comedian to find out where the line is drawn and then to cross it deliberately. And then their job is to have people glad that they did that and that they dragged them along, you know? I think that applies to artists. That applies to artists in general. I think it should. You know, you should be exploring the boundaries and pushing them. And, you know, that discomfort that comes from pushing those boundaries, and even if you're uncomfortable, putting yourself in an uncomfortable space as a creative person, that's where interesting things happen, right? If you're doing stuff and it feels kind of rote and it feels safe and everybody's praising you for it, you might not be doing much. You know, you might be doing something forgettable. If everybody just loves it and nobody's talking about it and nobody feels any kind of tension about it, then you might be missing something. Maybe you could push a little harder. Maybe you could go a little further out and see what happens. Because those places where there are question marks, that's where the art really is. And we have to allow ourselves and one another to do those things. We have to give each other the slack to explore this kind of stuff, because sometimes it can, you know, sometimes it might blow up in your face. Sometimes it might not be that good. Sometimes it might get scary and you don't like it. And that's fine, you know, but it's like, it's worth the exploration, because discovery can only come from going that way. You know, does that answer your question? Yeah,
it does. You've also made me think of, have you watched listened to that podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling?
I have, yes.
Yeah, it's so interesting because she started to get cancelled on the right because her books were like witchcraft, right? We don't want our children to listen to that. And now she's being cancelled on the left because she doesn't agree with transgender politics. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah. And it's not even just transgender politics across the board. It's specific things. And there's kind of this thing I call the one thought rule, where if one idea is just out of line, you're out. All it takes is one thought that's not in perfect alignment with whoever has decided is the correct way to be thinking and acting. Then you're out, you know, and there's no it's interesting because there's no discussion about it. There's no, well, is that a reasonable concern, or is it just, is it just craziness? Is it paranoia? Is it bigotry? It's automatically bigotry. It's automatically hate. And, there's a knee jerk there that I think is unhelpful. And it affects art because people feel worried. They feel afraid to express themselves, or if they do express themselves, they don't share it. And so we don't get the benefit of seeing or hearing or reading people's beautiful artwork, or even not beautiful artwork, just their artwork, and having it be a part of our tapestry, a part of our social tapestry. I guess some people might argue, well, that's what we want. We don't want certain things to be part of our tapestry because it ruins the tapestry. But I don't think so, because I don't think there's anything that you can't learn from. So even if I watch a movie and it's terrible, I may be kind of annoyed that I wasted my time, like 2 hours. Man, I could have watched something that was good, but I still pick up something from it. There's something that if you have the right attitude, you can walk away having learned something, even if it wasn't great. And I think there's something about that, there's something about failure in the sense of, I didn't quite achieve what you were trying to do there, or I didn't get it. There's something there. That's just another question mark to explore. That's just another thing. Well, what would I have done, or what could have happened? And here we are. We're now generating ideas,
I wish everyone was like that, Angel.
Well,
Was there a moment in time where you weren't? Like when you didn't have this open-minded attitude?
I'm sure that I was closed-minded about a bunch of stuff. But generally speaking, I don't think so. 'Cause, what's funny is I grew up in a very liberal, small L liberal environment. It was multicultural. It was tons of people with, different backgrounds, first generation American, children of immigrants. And it was this big kind of, the ideal of America, this idea of a melting pot, this idea of all these people coming together and they have these shared values and they live together and it works and they get along more or less, as much as people can get along. And, and I was kind of taught these tenets of, you should be open, you should be open-minded, you should listen to people who have different opinions than you, because you might learn something, and who knows if you're the one who's wrong. And I grew up being told these things, and then it kind of contrasts with my more traditional family environment where it's my parents are from the Dominican Republic, that kind of culture that is very authoritarian. And because I said so, and that never sat well with me, because I said so is not a reason. And I always went, well, it doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. And I kept asking questions, and so there's a temperament thing as well, kind of mixing in here, that I just go, no, I have a desire to understand, and you're not going to just shut me up. So I'm going to keep asking. And, I've got in trouble and all that kind of stuff for that. But also, yeah, just the environment, I was told, for example, just because you like the color pink doesn't mean you're not a boy, things like that seem completely obvious and almost silly to think otherwise. And the people who were, looking to censor and looking to ban books and looking to do these things were, super religious right-wing people, that's who I grew up with. And now we kind of have both ends of the spectrum doing that sort of stuff, or trying to, or wanting to. So yeah, I mean, I was brought up in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's usually people that come from those sort of authoritative countries that really relish in the freedom that we've sort of got in the West. Would you say it just feels like it's cancel culture and all that's coming from the left? I know you say it's both the right and the left, but it's really coming from left-wing authoritarianism, which I'm just like, do you have any idea where that came from?
I don't know. I think that it comes from both directions in different ways. And one is more salient, I think, probably because it feels newer and it's almost stranger. because of what I just said, where, we were brought up thinking, no, we're the liberal ones. We're the ones who want to hear ideas that people don't like, and we can decide for ourselves whether we want to read a book or not. We don't want you to tell us that we can't read it. All that stuff was kind of the liberal perspective. And now it seems odd to be like, well, wait a minute. Weren't we the ones who thought this? Now we're thinking the opposite. We're doing the same thing that these people were doing. And it's also just different manifestations of it. I think, the culture is so deeply infused with left-wing type people. It's just the way things worked out. You don't have I'm sure you do have a lot of closeted right-leaning people in Hollywood and things like that. Not a lot of them are probably vocal because you can tell what the majority is. You can tell most people are at least pretending to believe all these things and do all these things, and you don't want to stick out. You don't want to be a dick, all that kind of stuff. But I think it all comes from the same impulse. This is what I mean, is that I feel like it's the same thing, just manifesting in different ways. People are going to pull whatever levers they have, so the left has cultural levers and they're going to pull those. The right has some, governmental levers and some institutional levers, and they're going to pull those. And that's just the way it works. And then they'll fight with each other to try to grab each other's levers. And, here we are. But that impulse is human. That impulse is just, oh, this is corrupting. This is evil. This is bad. I need to get rid of it. I need to stop it. It's a totally human thing. Free expression and liberalism and all that stuff. That's the aberration. That's the weird thing. It's weird to want free speech. It's weird to value it. It's weird to hang on to that principle because everybody has things that they don't like and things that they feel are bad for us if other people believe it, COVID stuff, all that kind of stuff. People have those ideas and everybody has that impulse of, man, if we just shut these people up, it'd be so much better. But then, of course, there's you have to flip it and be like, well, now you're giving them the license to shut you up. And do you want that? So it all comes from that same impulse. I think it's a very human thing.
That's really interesting because I always thought, freedom is the norm. But you've made me think, oh, actually, it's not really. Most of the world does not have the ability,
No.
freedom of expression. And
no.
Nah.
Yeah.
Was there
95 or 98% of history has been absolutely pummeling without free expression, without liberty, without any of those things. It's been authoritarian for sure.
Man, so we are really living in a time of awesomeness, I guess. And that's why people like you are probably trying to really promote these liberal values and be like, no, like these values are really good. I'm wondering, it seems like it was gradual for you, but I'm wondering if there was like a specific moment or anything that sort of happened in your life which really compelled you to start really emphasizing these ideas and wanting to get involved in all these organizations and writing about it. Because it's pretty amazing, some of the writing you do, but we wouldn't have needed it like, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago. Or maybe we always do, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I guess so. I don't know. I mean, you answer the call that's calling, if it were up to me, I would be, a full-time working musician. I would be, playing in my band and making records and touring and doing all that kind of stuff. And then maybe do movies and write books. And that's what I would be doing, just exploring and being completely engrossed in my artistic and creative endeavors. I feel though that I probably still would end up here somehow because I do have this compulsion to understand and also to help other people understand, whether it's to understand me or to understand one another. I have this sort of, try to get mom and dad to stop fighting impulse. I can't help it. So when I see things that don't make sense or when I see people not making sense, I can't help it. I need to say something and do something about it. So, being a traveling, working musician full time is a difficult thing to achieve. So I didn't quite nail that. And, I was finding my way as a writer, trying to figure out, well, how can I at least make a living doing one of the things that I like to do? and I found some good work, and I was doing stuff. And then, just having a general interest in culture and communication and science and all of these ideas, I'm just entertained by, this is what I do for fun, is just think. I like thinking about things and breaking things down and debating stuff. It's fun. But then 2020 happened, and the George Floyd thing happened, and the Black Lives Matter protests started happening. And then I started seeing people behaving in ways that I found unnerving. They're very, very, like, I'm surrounded by people who are saying things that don't make sense, or saying things that are not totally true, or saying things that are oversimplified. And it was really bugging me. And things, kept escalating. And I think the big moment for me anyway was, the here in the States, there's Harper's Magazine. Thomas Chatterton Williams, a writer, he decided to put together this sort of letter saying, hey, can we please turn the temperature down? Have open debate. We should cherish free speech and free expression and the free exchange of ideas. This overly censorious culture that we're steeped in right now is a problem. It's called the Harper's Letter. And the reaction to it was, again, nonsensical and oversimplified, and they seem to have completely missed the point. And so I was compelled to write this essay called The Harper's Letter Was for, I'm a nobody, the Harper's Letter was for me. Just kind of making the point that these people, J.K. Rowling and Salman Rushdie and all these people who signed this letter were able to take the heat for saying something like that, which is, I mean, like you said before, like this is something that should be a given, but unfortunately needed to be restated. And even the restatement didn't land for people. They were misinterpreting it all over the place. So I was just making that argument, and that kind of caught some people's attention. And then I started getting invited to write more stuff. And so I did. And then I end up in organizations like Fire and Fair. And here I am. I'm still doing it. I'm doing podcasts and interviews with interesting, cool people, and just getting the ideas out there and talking.
One of your articles that you did write that caught my eye was the concept of star manning. Are you able to explain that concept?
Yeah. So it's another one of those things that, used to just be a given, or at least for the most part. And it's not a new idea. It's just a clever packaging that it's a clever branding for the basic principle of not assuming that the person you're arguing with or the person that you're talking to is a monster or a horrible person just because they disagree with you about something. So there's the concept of steel manning, which is about, engaging with the strongest version of a person's argument. In other words, if you can repeat their argument back to them in a way that they would agree with, and if you could even do it in a way where they say, you know what, that's even better than what I was saying, that's a better way of putting it, then you're steel manning. You're strengthening their argument so that you're on the same page in terms of what you're talking about. Star manning takes it a step further and ensures that you're also engaging with the strongest, most charitable possible version of the person making the argument, because the problem, of course, is that no one wants to steel man an argument from a person they consider to be beneath contempt. Why would you do that? Why would you give charity to a monster, right? So it's this explicit recognition of your interlocutor's humanity, and that their argument is coming from a place where they believe it's right, and they can explain to you why it's right. And it's up to you to figure that out. It's up to you to ask questions and learn where they're coming from. You don't have to agree with it, but it's better to understand it. If you're going to either persuade them or oppose them effectively, you need to understand where they're actually coming from. And if you have a caricature of them in your mind, if you're thinking these are evil people who want to destroy the world or who want to kill my family, or, whatever you're thinking, that's almost certainly not going to be true. And it's going to keep you from being effective when you're challenging them or opposing them or trying to persuade them. So that's what star manning is. It's just this explicit recognition of humanity and relative good intentions. These people are doing what they believe is right and good. Most people are doing that. There are very, very few people in the world who are consciously acting to make it a worse place to live. Almost everybody, almost everyone will tell you no, this is the thing that everyone should do. And if everyone did it, things would be better, you know? And it's just understanding that and making it explicit. It allows you to create common ground in a way.
Yeah, I guess because the most common one we do, or what I see being done, is straw manning, which is when, you make what you just explained, you make a caricature of the person and you make a caricature of their argument, which seems to be more natural. Doesn't it? Like when
it's easier because there are a billion ways to be wrong. Yeah. And there are a billion ways to be wrong about something. And there's only a couple of ways to be right. So the stats are against you there.
So where do we even start with having compassion for other people? I mean, I suppose it's because most of our lives are online these days, right? And when we're online, we're not even interacting with a human being. We're interacting with an idea. And it's so easy to just slam a person because you're not even seeing them as a full human being. I mean, the only thing I could think of is just get offline. But where do we even start with that?
Yeah, but that's not going to work, right? Because there's so much to gain from being online and doing things and interacting with one another. There's so much we can get out of it that's good. And there's so much that we need to do this way. It's just the way the world works. So that's not a good strategy, right? Like, you're not going to get 7 billion people to sign off and delete their accounts, right? That's probably impossible. But where do we start? We start with ourselves. We just say, well, look, how would I want to be treated and seen and understood? And how would I react if someone were coming at me the way that I'm coming at this person? If I'm approaching them a certain way, just flip that experience. Imagine something you deeply care about and you feel you're absolutely right about, and someone is attacking you the way that you're attacking other people. How would that affect your perspective? Are you likely to change your mind? Are you likely to listen? Or are you likely to just tell them, fuck off, I hate you, and you're just fighting. You're not talking about anything. If these things really matter to you, if these issues are important, if the stakes are really, really high, then it seems like you would want to have the best possible strategy, right? And it tends not to work when you just bully and shame and berate people. You know how people will react because you know how you would react. That's where you have to start. You have to realize, well, there's a certain way I want and deserve to be treated. And then you have to just recognize there's nothing special about you, and everybody deserves that, And then we get to the difficult bit where you go, no, some people actually don't deserve that. Okay, why not? And then you have to work out, why don't they deserve it? Well, because they believe these horrible things. Okay, why do they believe those things? Because they're stupid or evil? No. Because they have certain experiences and upbringings and educations, and who knows what's going on with them. And that's what you have to answer. You have to figure it out. Where are they coming from? How come they believe this? They didn't just, crawl out of some hole twirling their mustache saying, I want to destroy the world today. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. You have to really think about it and put effort into it because it is difficult. It's difficult not to get angry. But if you really want to achieve something besides, feeling good because you've made somebody else feel bad, if you actually want to get somewhere, you're going to have to recognize human nature. And the best way to do that is to realize, well, how would I do it? How would I work? How would I react?
Yeah, I get what you saying as well about human nature, because someone said to me the other day, I don't know if you believe this is true, but we're naturally tribal. Like, we naturally like to stick with our tribe. It runs counter to our nature to actually emphasize common humanity and try and get on with people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. We have that natural tendency. But we have a lot of natural tendencies, right? We have a lot of urges and we have a lot of instincts, and we suppress and sublimate those urges and instincts all the time, right? Even though I'm hungry, when I walk past the fruit stand, I don't just take an apple. because I go, no, that's against the rules. I can't do that. I can't steal. I have to give this guy money. I have to make sure, I'm not being a jerk. And so we can do the same thing with our tribal instincts. We can find healthy ways to do it where it's kind of pretend and we scratch the itch, but it's not real. Like if you like sports, you can do it that way unless you get out of hand. Like a lot of football fans, get out of hand, right? I'm sure you know all about that. But generally speaking, oh yeah, we beat you last night. You guys suck, blah, blah, blah. Like, as long as there's kind of like a wink, wink sort of kayfabe to it, then you're kind of doing that. I personally have no desire to do that kind of thing. I really don't have it in me. I don't care about that. But that's just me. And if, there are things that are natural to us that we suppress all the time, or that we find more productive ways to route. Like we have aggression, we get our aggression out through working out or martial arts or whatever. There are ways that we can do it. And there are ways that we can do tribalism that are not toxic. We can find ways to have circles within circles within circles of connection. 'Cause of course, evolutionarily speaking, we're not really wired to know more than like 150 people.
Yeah.
But we know thousands, right? And we talk to thousands and we engage with thousands. So it's hard. So also forgive yourself because it's difficult,
Yeah.
but just keep trying and we can do this. We've made it this far. You and I are talking across, hemispheres. We're like on other sides of the planet. It's a different time of day. I think it might be the next day for you right now.
It is. Yep.
Because of this magnificent technology. Yeah. Because of this amazing technology that we have, all this progress we've made that makes this possible. You and I would never have met otherwise. Right. So, hey, we could probably figure out how not to be jerks to one another. That seems, relatively speaking, that seems so much less difficult. But who knows?
Yeah. I really agree with you, and you've really made me think of understanding that people really. I had a conversation with a fundamentalist Christian the other day, and I'm gay, and he's like, yeah, like I really believe being gay is a sin, and I I didn't get offended because I just had this deep understanding that wow, he really believes that what he's doing is loving. I just thought it was amazing. And then, yeah.
That's the thing is, there's so much incongruity.
I think there's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, there is. There's so much incongruity. But if you understand, all right, well, he read this book and he grew up in this environment and he was told these things and he deeply believes this perspective. And here's the rules for his perspective. It's like math. You're going to just, of course he believes that. It'd be strange if he didn't believe it, given the circumstances. That's a better way to approach it.
Yeah. And speaking of, bad ideas, I suppose, and going back to compassion, how do we show compassion to people with bad ideas, but without legitimizing them, like without bending? I can think of an example, like, dare I say it, maybe like the pronouns or something. Like I've just been thinking about it it suddenly came into our culture and I was just like, oh, this isn't really a good idea. But then you're being told, you're like, I'm like, I'm a bit gender nonconforming. Like I'm a lesbian. Like I get what you're saying, but like just be who you are. You don't need to go around dictating speech. That seems just quite odd to me, and it quite often seems like it's about power and control, and quite often the people that use it are people that just don't have any control over their own life, so they're trying to control other people. That's my opinion and my experience. But I also want to be compassionate to those people. Like just because I don't like your idea doesn't mean I don't like you. Yeah, and maybe you don't have to be specific with that situation, but just in any situation, like how do we show compassion to people without legitimizing their ideas?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it can be difficult to do that because another thing that we tend to do is identify with our ideas our ideas are not just our ideas. They are who we are, so I believe this, and it's not just something I carry around in my mind and my heart. It's me. And without it, I wouldn't be myself. So that's kind of how people treat some of these things. And that obviously creates a problem, because once you criticize the idea, they feel criticized as people. So you have to actually make the effort and say, listen, find some way, however works for you, and makes it clear to them, I respect you as a human being. I understand where you're coming from. And if you don't understand, you have to start there. You have to start by just asking and say, well, what utility does this pronoun thing have? What purpose is it meant to serve? And they're going to have an answer, and they'll be delighted to tell you because they care about it. And then you have, all right, so, maybe you've thought about it before, and you go, well, okay, I definitely agree with trying to make people feel comfortable and accepted. That's a good thing. But there are some issues like, what about this or what about that? And now you're having a conversation. You can at least settle them a little bit by acknowledging that the intention that they have is something you agree with. Like, I certainly agree with making people feel comfortable. I certainly agree with, making people feel like they're included. That's a good thing. I generally think, yeah, that's a good thing we should try to do for people. Not every approach to doing that is going to be productive or actually achieve that. And some of them are going to have side effects that we have to think about. But here you are, you're already kind of breaking things apart a little bit. And you've set them at ease by saying, I'm with you on the motivation. That's star manning, So you can say, for example, I use this example all the time. Daryl Davis. He's with FAIR. He's an advisor at FAIR, and I believe he's also a fellow for FAIR in the Arts, because he's a jazz music. Well, not a jazz musician. He's a musician, and he also deprograms Klansmen.
Wow.
And he is what we would call a highly melanated person. So that's a very strange situation to be in, but he's done it over 200 times, just through talking to people. And he certainly doesn't agree with any of the things that they say, but he figures out a way to make those people feel heard and respected and understood as human beings, even though he doesn't agree with or respect the ideas that they're espousing. And that can be tough to do. But if you do it, you have the chance at having them actually listen and really, really listen to you. There's incredible footage of Daryl Davis at a Klan rally, because he's invited by the Grand Wizard of this Klan rally, and he's surrounded by all these Klansmen in their robes, and he's there because he was invited by this guy, and this guy is telling all of his fellow Klansmen, I respect this guy because he respects me enough to sit down and talk to me, and so I respect him to sit down and talk to him. That's insane. But he achieved that through modeling the behavior and saying, look, I respect you as a human being. I don't think you're a monster. I don't think you're a horrible person. I don't agree with your ideas. I think you're wrong. But I want to understand. I want to understand where you're coming from. Explain to me how his big question is, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And you have to flip that as well. How can I hate you if I don't even know you? And if you think you know, you probably don't, So I think that's what you have to do. It's difficult, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I really like what you said about starting with yourself. That really resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
What's
the Michael Jackson song? You gotta start with yourself.
Michael Jackson.
Start with the man in the mirror. Yeah.
Yes. All right. What is next for you, Angel? What's the next project?
What's
the
next?
Yeah.
Well, I'll keep telling people this so that I force myself to do it. But Star Manning, I want to turn it into a book.
Oh, nice.
Or first, I want to turn it into a book proposal. Yeah, I want to turn it into a book proposal and then sell the proposal, and then I have to write the book. So that's the plan. Things have been very hectic and busy, so I have been procrastinating quite a lot on that. But the more people I tell, the more pressure I feel to actually do it. So there you go. That's the next big thing that I think is coming down the pipeline at some point. I'm doing the best I can to juggle everything I'm doing so that I can make the time and space for that.
I'll put it in the show notes. Angel's writing a book called Star Manning, so you have to do it.
Yeah.
And where can people?
No, please.
Where can people find you?
My website is angeleduardo.com. I'm on Twitter or X or whatever you call it now. I'm at StrangelEdWeird. And I'm on all the other things too. I went and got a name on Threads and Blue Sky and Mastodon, but I don't use them. So
Yeah.
wherever the party is, that's where I'm going to go hang out.
When everyone leaves X. I don't know about X. Like, what is it? Like, do you still tweet? Twitter, you tweet. Like, what? Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that.
It's unclear. Unclear. I think it's just posting. You just post now. They changed retweet to repost. So I guess it's post.
That's really boring.
But it's not else. As the branding. It's a terrible branding decision.
Yeah.
You know, Elon never had a marketing team for Tesla, and I guess it worked out for Tesla. But man, for social media, like you need marketing, dude. And the branding on Twitter was world renowned, and now you've just ditched it. I don't understand it. It's a silly idea. But
look forward to seeing where that goes.
That's where the people are. That's where I'll be talking.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'll chuck all that in the show notes. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you. It was great talking to you.